Good morning. And welcome to a early version of the poetry show. Normally, we broadcast at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. And today we're doing the show at 9, but we're not broadcasting right now. I have a technical transition we're doing today, so it'll be up probably by this afternoon, actually. On podcast.enlightenradio.org. And today, Janet Harrison, a wonderful host here, and has been gathering some poems on or right after Veterans Day. And so the soldiers and war and veterans are the themes of a number of poems she's picked out today. And so I'm going to ask her to how she it's always interesting to me the process was had her land on these poems um, and I've been reading them and they're very powerful. Janet, so tell us about the this Veterans Day.
Well, I started with one of my favorite war poems, which is Futility by Wilfred Owen, which is a World War One poem. Now, Wilfred Owen was a World War One poet, like Siegfried Sassoon, but he was killed in the war, actually. And this poem is one of the is a very powerful poem. And then I just went down through different conflicts and picked a poem for each conflict that I was going through. We couldn't, of course, hit them all because even all the current conflicts, I neglected the ones in Africa because I don't know the African
Right,
poet well.
right.
But I do want to acknowledge that this has been a limited show. But the first poem is by Wilfred Owen. It's called Futility. Move him into the sun. Gently its touch awoke him once, at home, whispering of fields half sown. Always it woke him, even in France, until this morning in the snow. If anything might rouse him now, the kind old sun will know. Think how it wakes the seeds, woke once the clays of a cold star. Our limbs, so dear achieved, our sides, full nerves still warm, so hard, too hard to stir? Was it for this the clay grew tall? Or what made fatuous sunbeams toil to break our sleep at all?
Right. Well, that sounds like a foxhole poem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he certainly was. He certainly spent his time in foxholes.
Right, right.
I thought it was very, I first encountered this poem in 12th grade.
Really?
My
Oh, okay.
grade
Yeah,
English
yeah.
teacher passed it out and told us to write an essay on it, and gave us 30 minutes.
Well, it's provocative. I mean, I, you know, whether he's talking about the him or the sun is interesting how it because the lines can apply to either or both, and but at times anyway, I thought that was an interesting kind of trick. And but you know the second verse is pretty complicated, it seems to me. You know, think how it wakes the sun, how the sun wakes the seeds. Uh, Woke once the days of a
The
cold
clay,
star.
the clays.
Oh, yeah, the clays, even better. The clays of a cold star. Um, you know, wow. Fairly cosmic, right? And limbs so dear achieved, our sides full nerved, still warm, too hard to stir. Was it for this the clay grew tall? I mean, you know, um, oh, and then the closing line there, where the whole tone, when you use the word fatuous, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're in a totally different mood, or at least the poet is, and you know, because when you think about how to read that line, you know, oh, what fatuous sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all. Um, Earth,
And
Earth is
that's
not really
where you go
asleep.
back to the tide of the futility, whether it was futile if
Yeah,
the sun that people were born, if this is what it comes to.
yeah, yeah. It's
But there was little hope in the trenches during World War One.
no, it was, it seemed like the ancient world was completely burning, going up in flames, and civilization, which had been supposedly advancing, was exposed with, this horror. The wars got bigger and the weapons got deadlier. So, no, yeah, I mean, I think World War One was, but the whole literature of disillusionment between the wars, right? It was
Yeah.
cynical, um, hard-bitten loser stories. I mean, not really. And I mean, think about Dostoevsky. Um, so you can sort of go between the wars in Europe and go to, like the 1890s in Russia. It's about the same thing, actually. Where there's little hope,
Mhm.
and so, but I think Wilfred Owen is just he's unique in a way. Um, his biography just is so short, and somehow it just when you know it, then these poems like this that are a little complicated, but they're intense, and and they take you to a foxhole kind of place. Yeah, in an interesting way, right? But yeah, I thought it's a great poem.
Yes. And the image of being by a dead comrade and wanting them to wake up and they're not going to is just so powerful. And he
Yeah,
approaches it kind of slantwise by addressing the sun at first.
yes, right. It's well, and it underscores, of course. I mean, nothing like World War One underscores the futility of war, which was the subject matter of just so much literature that followed it, right? And and then that it changed a little bit after World War II. I mean, there was that kind of literature that came after World War II. Um, I remember there was a bunch of the whole existential literature movement, right? Was alienated. Alienation, was the legacy of World War II. In addition to this, all patriotic victory over a terrible regimes. Um, it was it's interesting how these kinds of cycles evolve. Well, I can go on forever. I love that poem. Okay, so what what do you want to go to? Where do you want to go next, pal?
Next, we're going to World War II with the naming of the part, which is a poem by Henry Reed, which he wrote in 1942. And this poem is something we'll see, we'll come back to in some other poems, but it's this juxtaposition of militaristic language with the natural world, and the contrast between
Oh yeah, yeah.
effectively hard metal and blossoms,
This is
however you
a
want to put
this
it.
is a good poem. You want me to read this one?
Yes, if you would.
Oh, okay. 1942, naming of parts. Today we have naming of parts. Yesterday we had daily cleaning, and tomorrow morning uh, we have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all the neighboring gardens. And today we have naming of parts. This is the lower sling swivel, and this is the upper sling swivel, whose use you will see when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case, you have not got. The branches hold the gardens, and they're silent, eloquent gestures, which in our case, we have not got. This is the safety catch, which is always released with an easy flick of the thumb. And please do not let me see anyone using his finger. You can do it quite easy if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. And this you can see is the bolt. The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. We can slide it rapidly backwards and forwards. We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards, the early bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. They call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumbs, like the bolt and the breech and the cocking piece and the point of balance, which in our case, we have not got. And the almond blossom silent in all the gardens, and the bees going backwards and forwards. For today, we have naming of parts. That was really cool.
I think it's a very powerful poem, and it the juxtaposition of the factual information about, I assume it's a rifle that they're holding. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know about armaments.
yeah,
Um,
right.
but with the garden and the bees, I just thought it was very powerful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought she just interwove the images with the little instruction about the parts of the rifle. Um, excuse me. It's wonderful. Do you know anything about her?
About what?
Yeah,
Have you read? No,
about it's him, about Henry Reed.
not anything about the poet. I just found this poem. It's one I've known for a while. I found it in a collection called Poems of Peace and War.
No, I see. Okay. Well, he's very good. I wouldn't mind seeing some more of his stuff at some point. What's next, my
Um,
dear?
we're jumping forward to July of 1967 with Lisa Mueller, one of our favorite poets. We talk about her a lot in
Yeah,
this show.
that's true.
And this is called Names. And this is 67. It's written during Vietnam War. But just so you'll understand this poem better, she emigrated from post-war Germany when she was 14, speaking no English, to this country and learned English and became a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, for her collected poems. And this is called Names, and it was published in Poetry Magazine. A few names tell it all, the whole incredible history of one generation, mine. Names that we cannot manage with a drum roll like Waterloo, nor pinch to the eloquence of tragic Gettysburg. Hiroshima sticks in our throats. We choke on the bones of Buchenwald, spit out the stones of Berlin. Who says Vietnam burns his tongue? And Mississippi, oh, Mississippi scrubs out our mouth till we cry mercy.
It's good. She's amazing, isn't she? Lisa Mueller.
Yes, she is. But I thought this poem, in a very understated way, summarizes so much of the history, going back to World War II with Hiroshima and Buchenwald, Berlin, Vietnam, which was going on when she wrote this poem,
Right.
and all of the civil rights conflicts in Mississippi, with the ending, Mississippi, oh, Mississippi scrubs out our mouths till we cry mirth.
Yeah. Um, and right. Well, I think the echoes of her poetry. I keep thinking about some of others that I've read of hers that uh, I think they fit today. I mean, we're in the kind of the '60s was a big jam up, and this is turning into a big jam up um, now, and it has the same kind of I mean, the big thing about Vietnam is there's something wrong with that war,
Hmm.
and you could it doesn't even matter where you were in it. If you were over there, I mean, there was the war itself, and then there was, the fact that the country didn't was divided about supporting it. And so, what the hell were you doing there? Okay. And when you got back, um, the adjustment was not easy for almost anybody. And for some people, it was impossible. So, yeah, it's a tr national trauma. Um, I think inspires a certain kind of poetry. And, Lisa Miller's is just a wonderful reflection of that intensity of perspective that she has. Is she's gone, right? She's passed on. Am I right?
Yeah, she has died. She lost her sight late in years, but she never was bitter about it. She just went on writing.
Right. Well, I mean, I understand that process because although I've gotten some improvement with cataract surgery. I just put my little plug in for my cataract surgeon. I'm seeing a lot better. Um, so, but blindness, yeah, I mean, I think about Beethoven going deaf and still
Yep.
composing. There's that's a plane of, I guess, expertise or something that I don't think I've ever achieved. I'm not likely to achieve. But yeah. What's next, my dear? This is, I mean, these poems would normally turn you into an anti-war type of person, which is probably most people are, unless they're, terribly provoked. Um, and yet the conflicts go on just terribly.
Next, we're going to the war in Iraq, um,
Oh boy.
and Brian Turner, and I decided to do the poem "How Bright It Is"
Right.
rather than his other poem. Some of Brian Turner's poems are very, very, very dark and very bitter. This one is dark, but it's got some lovely language in it as well that kind of softens it. How bright it is. April, and the air dry as the shoulders of a water buffalo. Grasshoppers scratch at the dirt, rub their wings with their thin legs, flaring out in front of the soldiers in low arcing flights, wings a blur. The soldiers don't notice anymore, seeing only the wreckage of the streets, bodies draped with sheets, and the sun. How bright it is, how hard and flat and white. It will take many nails from the coffin makers to shut out this light, which reflects off everything: the calloused feet of the dead, their bony hands, their pale foreheads, so cold, brilliant in the sun.
Yeah. 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 That's I don't know what the phrase dry as the shoulders of a water buffalo actually really means. That was the line that bothered me a little bit about it. Um, but in toto, it's very potent, but the soldiers don't notice anymore. Anyway, but this is great. Yeah. Nonetheless, I wasn't aware that the shoulders of the water buffalo are dry. Or,
I think it was just to signal that we're somewhere other than Pennsylvania,
okay. Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
not really sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, what's your thought about that, Mo?
Um, I thought, the grasshoppers, they're associated sometimes with plagues of grasshoppers and so on, so
Yeah.
so it's a little bit of an ominous image, even though it's done very low key. And then the soldiers don't notice, seeing only the wreckage of the streets, bodies draped with sheets, and the sun, how bright it is, how hard and flat and white. And again, we have the sun here, but it's not going to wake anybody up. And they don't even have the illusion of
Yeah.
it waking anybody up in this poem. It's just devastation. Many nails from the coffin makers just shut out this light, which reflects off everything. So I think it's a little bit of a desolate poem, but then a lot of Brian Turner's poems are.
So how do we know it's a rack? Or is it?
Hmm.
I mean, do we know that? I mean, is that,
Yes, that's where he served.
oh, okay. Okay. All
So I
right.
assume it's Iraq.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Um, wow. I'm speechless, actually. What's next?
Okay, let me get to the next poem. Okay, that was Iraq. And now I want to go to Ukraine with a poem by a woman writing about some of the civilian destruction in Ukraine. And the poem is not coming up. Let me go back and try it again.
I had it somewhere here.
It's like it's necklace is the one I want to read. Here it
Oh,
is.
yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
By
Yeah.
Osaka Stomina.
Okay.
Um, and it's of course, as you know, Ukraine has suffered tremendous destruction. I mean, the war is being fought on its territory, and this is called Necklace. Mothers won't be able to mourn them. Wives won't be able to retrieve them. Too many of them to record their names. Away from prying eyes, they'll be buried. Some will receive medals for their death. And their souls soaring over the burned city, their bodies scattered on the ground like a torn necklace. They have filled this empty, hopeless May. Dandelions are already blooming next to them, and grass is advancing. The wind cradles them in vain. The sun touches them. They are discovered and collected like mushrooms or flowers. Silent losses, completely anonymous. Removed from the streets to retain decorum, loaded into sacks with their eyes open. Closing them is too much work. It's not a burial, it's a concealment of a crime.
Yeah.
I thought that
Well,
was extremely
yeah.
powerful.
Um, yes, she takes you there. Mothers won't be able to mourn them. I mean, that right there, I mean, is like a very powerful line all by itself. Just the minute you comprehend that line, the mothers won't be able to mourn them. That, the sense of loss is greater than death.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Wives won't be able to retrieve, and there's
Too
too
many
many to
of them to
record all their
record
names.
their names.
I mean, it's just like a descent into nothingness, right? Some will receive medals for their deaths. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean that's really very potent. I wish they would we would do more of these poems on Veterans Day in schools. And just a certain lack of sensitivity you get from like the media broad. Like you take the sensibility in these poems we're talking about this morning. I mean, you don't see you don't see that anywhere on mass media. I don't. Um, I don't see it. That if you go to war or if that when you hear these diplomats talk their whatever code language about what is or is not happening, and what part of their statement is, uh, the- you know, is true or not. Um, you can find yourself in the land where none of these images right here are in front of you. That this poem what's in front of you, and same with Wilfred Owen and some of the others. Um, you're not
Yeah,
there, so
choose the adjective unflinching. These poems don't flinch away from the reality of war and don't
right,
romanticize.
right, and or well, sometimes the news it gets reduced to, well, there was an attack in so and so responded, and the State Department says they're working toward a settlement. And and then you hear about all the children killed, or and the people that are just trying to going through their daily life, and wow, wiped out. Um, And then you say, well, aren't there rules in war where you're not supposed to harm civilians? And then you end up in this unbelievable conundrum of, well, what what's okay in war and what's not. Um, which is I don't think was ever amounted to much. But nonetheless, these kind of poems right here just say, gee, if you're not if you're making yourself not see, what the conflict is going to create and do, really to all sides, then, really should you, re-examine, like, for example, suppose you that think that the president's America First policy is, and tons of guns is going to be, and make the bargaining position, stronger. um, if it doesn't get you into a global war, which you may or may not win. And then, of course, who's going to win the war? Okay, really, and if it's global, especially. Yeah. So I think
Well,
these, yeah.
um, there was a great memoir written about World War II called "Every War Has Two Losers." So I think that's very true. In this poem, now we're going to Gaza, and this is a poem by Namim Hassan. I don't know them. They're apparently a Palestinian poet. And it goes, in Gaza, a mother never sleeps.
No.
Listens to the dark, searches its edges, sorts out sound, sound by sound, to select a suitable story to read her kids to sleep. When they sleep, she stands up to shield them from death. A mother in Gaza does not cry. She folds up fear, rage, and prayers in her lungs and waits for the hum of warplanes to fade, then exhales. A mother in Gaza is not like other mothers. She bakes bread with her own eyes' salt. She feeds her children to the homeland.
Wow. I think I'm going to post that one today. Really, I do. You know, well, that's just the other thing is that you even though you're connected to it because things that happen halfway across the world, okay, are on your news feed and images from it are right there in front of you, but you don't know them, the people involved, but nonetheless, your sense that they're related to you. There is a connection. Um, and of course, in this case, with the whole set of alignments in the Middle East, there's a very pretty direct connection. And but it leaves you feeling somewhat powerless, right? I mean, I kind of feel like Kamala Harris, okay? About well, what do you do? Do you turn the whole thing on its head? And the whole foundations of Middle East policy, which has mostly always been about oil, I'm sure, but whatever, and or do you, hope it won't get too bad, whatever, whatever that means. Um, and that sense of powerlessness, where you're in the grips of some set of forces that, no one is really, yes, you can trace decisions and man, that was wrong. But, a lot of times alternative decisions aren't very clear in front of you, right? I mean, if they're half baked, it's very difficult to go order, millions of people to do something when, you have very limited information. You know what I mean? And so that's my sense in reading this poem, or hearing that one that you just read, um, is I feel powerless.
Well, part of our power is to witness and not to forget. And another part of our power is to mend the wing of the bird that falls in our backyard, to try and do what we can to be kind, to be loving, to be the best people we can be, and go forward that way, and hold hands and support like-minded people. It's not a political thing, it's a friendship and a loving thing. And my final poem is I didn't want to leave you in such a dark place, so I picked a poem by Robert Graves. And Robert Graves was, of course, a veteran of World War One, and he described that in his memoir and Goodbye to All That, which is a very powerful book, very worth reading. But this is a short poem about the cabbage white butterfly, which is the little white butterfly we see floating around in the summer, very ubiquitous, fluttering around, the little white butterfly. It's called Flying Crooked. The butterfly, the cabbage white, his honest idiocy of flight, will never now, it is too late, master the art of flying straight. Yet has, who knows so well as I, a just sense of how not to fly. He lurches here and here by guess, and God and hope and hopelessness. Even the aerobatic swift has not his flying crooked gift. And I chose this poem for the line, he lurches here and here by guess and God and hope and hopelessness. And what we have right now is God and hope and hopelessness in each other.
Well, there you go, my friend. That's the crooked, the flying crooked. Well, yeah. Okay. If we get on the butterfly. Um, wow. That is great. That's a great poem. Um, that's really good. His honest idiocy of point. Oh boy. Um, yes. Well, once again, we're, in the hands of a hidden power.
I
That,
guess in God and hope and hopelessness.
you're right. That seems like the four winds a bit, and then there's the strong and weak nuclear force, I suppose, but um, and gravity and God and hope and hopelessness. Oh boy, what a crossroads that is. Blind crooked. Well, that's a good though. That's a good recommendation here. I think for folks to. I like that one too. I think I'm gonna post that one too. That would be. In case you're confused or you're wondering what's really going on. Um, yeah, it's interesting how butterflies have no. I don't think I can't remember seeing a butterfly do a line of flight. Have you?
Maybe monarchs sometimes when they're migrating, but I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Right. Is
But the cabbage white is really notorious. It kind of flutters and goes up and down and this way and that way.
right, right. All right. Well, I think these are good poems to ponder as we, step into this new future we got here in front of us. So, and I think you're right. I mean, the more community there is, the Quakers have a great tradition called uh, the friendly eights, I think they call them, for dinner parties and getting to know your friends and neighbors. And there's probably in the end, I mean, if things start to keep falling apart in the country, um, that's what's going to be available, your neighbors. So worthwhile getting to know them better. And I think that this poetry, um, it's anti-war poetry, but because it is, I mean, it's asking you to focus in on what you really have. Um, what protection is there? And maybe flying crooked is the right technique. Thank you, Janet. Is that it? Or we have another one?
That was it. That was my closing poem.
Oh, well, I
More
love that one. It was
eggs.
wonderful, wonderful choice. Um, you have any thoughts about what's going to happen in the future, like in next week or whatever?
Well, we had done physician poets, and I thought about maybe doing a show on poetry from a patient's point of view. There's some very powerful poems written by people with various diagnoses that I was
That's
looking at.
true. That is true. Why don't we do that? Yeah, that sounds good. Right. I mean, we could do a little bit like James Baldwin and remind him why that reminded me. I don't know, how he went to Paris to try to find out whether or not he was really, you know, what everybody in the America looked at him as a fool and an idiot and an immoral person. And he went to Paris and found out that he wasn't. So yeah, I think we can. I think the idea of going from the doctor to the patient, from the physician to the patient, and going from flying crooked to you're at the mercy of these doctors and other forces, and your perspective changes. I think it'd be great. Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Okay, Jim, well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for it's just a wonderful set of poems. And okay, everybody, take care of each other. It's late, but everything comes next. And these poems will be up on podcast.enlightenradio.org within a day or two. All right. All right. Take care.